I recently got access to Google's brand new AI, Bard. I've been on the waitlist for a couple of days, and I got an email saying I'd been accepted. So the only prior experience I really had with messing around with text-based AI was with AI Dungeon a couple of years ago.
I'm gonna say imports illegal chimp.
And that was really impressive. So after reading into Bard, I really wanted to push the parameters of what was possible, and I asked it to write me a story. So this is a short story about a mandrill mourning my death. The mandrill sat on the edge of a cliff. His head hung low. He'd been there for days, ever since Ollie had died. He was lost and alone. Ollie had been his friend, his only friend. They had been through so much together. They had played together, fought together, and laughed together. Ollie had been his everything, and now he was gone. The mandrill didn't know how to go on without him. He didn't know what to do with himself. He just sat there at the edge of the cliff, and he cried. He cried for days, until he couldn't cry anymore. Then he just sat there, staring out the ocean. He didn't know what else to do. Later that day, a group of people arrived at the beach. They were looking for a place to swim, when suddenly they saw the mandrill sitting on the edge of the cliff. They were surprised.
"What are you doing here?"
one of them asked. The mandrill didn't answer. He just stared at them with his big, sad eyes.
"Are you lost?"
the person asked. The mandrill shook his head.
"Do you know who this is?"
The person asked, pointing at Ollie's grave. The mandrill nodded.
"My friend."
The people were surprised. They had never seen a mandrill talk before.
"But mandrills don't talk."
One of them asked.
"I can talk."
The mandrill said.
"I've always been able to talk."
The people were amazed. They had never met a talking mandrill before.
"How did you learn how to talk?"
One of them asked.
"My friend taught me."
The mandrill said.
"He was the only one who ever understood me."
The people were silent for a moment. They were really touched by the mandrill's story.
"Listen, kid. We're sorry for your loss."
One of them said. The mandrill nodded.
"Thank you."
People left, and the mandrill was alone again. But he was not as alone as he had been before. He knew that he had people who cared for him. He sat there a while longer, thinking about Ollie. He would never forget him. Ollie would always be his friend. And then he stood up, and he walked away, back into the forest, where he truly belonged. He knew that he had to keep going. Even though Ollie was gone, he had to find a way to live without him. But he would never forget Ollie. Ollie would always be in his heart. The mandrill continued to mourn Ollie's death for days. He would often sit at the edge of the cliff, staring out the ocean again, and thinking about his friend. On one particular day, at around 3:30 noon, the mandrill was sitting on the edge of the cliff, when he saw a group of people in the distance coming towards him. The people were carrying a very large box, and they were heading towards Ollie's grave. The mandrill observed as the people put down the box next to Ollie's grave. They then opened the box and took out a beautiful statue of a mandrill. The statue was made of marble, and it was very lifelike. The mandrill then witnessed as the people placed the statue on Ollie's grave. They then stood back and admired it. Out of curiosity, the mandrill approached the statue and observed it closely. He could see that the statue was a perfect likeness of Ollie, but as a mandrill, the mandrill smiled, and he touched the statue with his hand. The mandrill then turned to the strangers.
"Thank you. You don't know how much this means to me. How could I ever repay you?" "Listen, kid. I know we only spoke for a brief couple of minutes last time I saw you, but I saw something in you. I saw the goodness in your heart, and I saw your love for your friend Ollie, and we wanted to do something to celebrate his life. So no need to thank us, friend, and I hope you can live the rest of your life in peace. Goodbye."
The mandrill knew that Ollie would always be with him in spirit, and he would never forget his friend. And that's the story of a mandrill mourning my life. The end.